It's like finding a hobby.
Yes, just that is great.
I'm like a moving target.
Yeah,
I'm
that's
not good
cool.
at standing still.
I've got a wide lens on this thing, so we're good. Because it's
This does not make sense.
Please pick on me if there's any.
go for it. No, closer, closer.
I hate Hi everybody, so we're just about to get started. So first of all, my name is Suzanne White. For those of you who don't know me, I work in transformation delivery alongside a group of wonderful, enthusiastic colleagues to deliver the Transformation Delivery Life At program. And that is all about us wanting to make sure that we have opportunities in our team to think about our wellness, how we're recognising our staff, and to provide opportunities for learning and skills development. I'm absolutely delighted to welcome all of you to our first ever Lunch and Learn event. So it's the first in what I hope is going to be a regular series of Lunch and Learns on a quarterly basis. And today we're joined by Ryan Kendall. Ryan has joined us today with the sort of the bold promise of changing how we think about decision making. So Ryan, and I'm going to read from the intro that I've got to make sure I don't get it wrong. So Ryan's going to give us an introduction to behavioural economics, and he is doing so as currently the Senior Research Associate at the Department of Economics at University College London. He's the manager of UCL's Experimental Laboratory for Finance and Economics, and previously earned his PhD in economics at the University of California. So, delighted to have him with us today, and with no further ado, I'll hand you over to him.
Neat. So look at the screen here, everybody. So you see there's a small gray square right on the screen right there. Can everyone see the small gray square?
Yeah.
If you can't see the screen, maybe it's a good time to make sure you can see the screen. So we have the small gray square there. And I want you to think about how gray that square is. Now we have another screen here. My goodness, look at this screen, it really messes it up. So we have another screen here, and we have another gray square there. And I'm going to ask you a simple question. Which gray square is darker? So it may not be super clear on the screen, but the one on the right looks darker to everybody. I see a lot of nodding heads. Look at all this great participation already. What a terrific group I have here. Ryan, obviously the gray square on the right is darker. Why you started this presentation with such a stupid question. What's fascinating is that these shades are the exact same. And to see this, you remove the outside, and you can see now they're both the exact same shade of gray. So now if I were to ask you which is more dark, you'd say, well, Ryan, they're the same, obviously. So what I did here is the way you represent a choice can drastically and systematically change how we answer. So by putting this gray on a dark background, it looked lighter than this gray on a light background. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. This is a very well-known visual illusion. It's a framing effect in vision, and it underlines what I'm going to talk about today. So just like I can show you gray with different choice architecture, with different context, I can make you see gray differently. I can make you see other things differently and affect your choice in a systematic way, just by the way I present a problem. That's what I'm going to talk about today. And I'm going to talk about things more interesting than the color gray. This here is the best graph in all of social sciences. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. What this is here, organ donation rates by country. Each bar is a country. And how high the bar is says what percentage of that population volunteers to give up their organs after death. So long story short, Organ donation is a big problem. We need lots of people to donate their organs. Long story short, it's good to have the bars high. So what countries have very high rates of organ donation rates? We shouldn't be surprised to see very forward-looking, progressive countries like Austria, Belgium, France, and so forth. So what countries are doing terribly? What backwards countries are doing terribly with very low rates of organ donation rates? Well, dagnabbit, it's us, Germany, Netherlands, Denmark, and so on. So it's not culture that's making the difference here. What's making the difference is a simple change in the way people are asked this question. So the countries on the left are asked, check this box if you want to be an organ donor. Nobody checks the box, nobody becomes organ donors. That's the groups on the left. Countries on the right say, check this box if you don't want to be an organ donor. No one checks the box, everyone becomes organ donors. So this is called an opt-in framework. You have to opt in to be an organ donor, opt out to be an organ donor. And this small change accounts for this drastic difference in this super important thing. Okay, so that's what I'm going to talk about today. A little bit about me. I'm at UCL. My job is to write research papers. Nothing I'm talking about today is my personal research, but I'm super excited about this stuff. So I have two goals for everyone here. I'm so delighted that so many people showed up today. I want to make some bold claims. First, I want everyone in this room to think about decision making differently after my 20-minute talk today. So we don't make decisions in a vacuum. We can be manipulated by structuring the environment differently. Sometimes these are called nudges. We're going to go through some examples, and you're going to see them in your day-to-day life all the time now. That's my goal for everybody here. Bold goal. What else I'd like you to do is, when I'm showing you these concepts, these techniques, these tools, I want you to think about how can I use this to make my job, to get some goals that I need accomplished here at SCI. So I want you to always think, how can I use, for example, opt-in versus opt-out to maybe influence something that I want to happen? Maybe. So I'll be around for a little bit after this. I'll have coffee. We can chat about your specific projects if you like. Here's my website, which my wife calls dorky and nerdy. And there's my email. So choice architecture or nudging is used to solve really big problems. And a big problem in America is people don't save enough money for retirement. In America, you're supposed to save a lot of money into a savings account so you can live off it when you retire. And you can see rather old people only have $17,000 saved in the account. Long story short, Americans don't save enough for retirement. This is a really big problem. How can we get them to save more? So one of the famous nudges, and I should stop for a second, so I'm not talking about my research here. These are just like the most famous, well-known, systematically replicated things in behavioral economics, as I see them. So when people were signing up for savings accounts, do I donate to my savings account or not? It was when they were being hired. So they'd say, check this box if you want to be a part, if you want to donate 3% of your money to savings accounts. That was opt-in. Then it was changed, so it was check this box if you don't want to automatically put 3% of your earnings into a savings account. And this simple change makes a lot more people sign up, put more money into their savings account. So it's just like the organ donation rates, it's just used to make people put more money into their savings account. I should also say I'd be delighted to take questions if anyone has any questions throughout. At the end, I'm being whispered at the end is good, thumbs up is good. So I will tell you when questions are okay then. Thank you. This was taken a step further. So in 2004, Richard Thaler and a co-author, Richard Thaler won the Nobel Prize in 2017 for this type of work. And it's called Save More Tomorrow. So how do we get people to save more and more from what they're earning today into their retirement account? So people enroll in an opt-out scheme. So it's when you're coming in as a worker, you have to check the box and say, I don't want to be a part of this savings program. Furthermore, the way it works is, Ryan, you're starting here at Save the Children, and you're going to get raises in the future. And we're going to take a little bit out of those raises and put it into savings account. So you're continually adding to how much you're adding to your savings account as time goes on. So this helps avoid some things like present bias, which I don't have time to talk about. But everyone in here, if I gave you the option to take 50 pounds today or 60 pounds in a year, almost everyone would take 50 pounds. Also loss aversion, which I'll talk a little bit about. Long story short, this idea has got people to enroll in the savings plans more, and they save a lot more money over time. So a lot of US companies have used these sorts of ideas to get people to save more money, which is good because it's solving a problem of old age poverty and whatnot. I'd be surprised if Save the Children didn't also do this. I don't know if anybody remembers, but you don't need to announce it now, but you guys probably have some type of opt-out scheme here, yes?
I was only going to say, it's now the law in this country that you have to be auto-enrolled into a vacancy.
It's the law that you have
Yeah,
to.
you have to be auto-enrolled in.
I have a lot to say about that. So this whole topic that I'm talking about here is called liberal paternalism, and so it's in the middle between, say, making it a law. If we could just nudge people to save, maybe you could argue that would be better than saying you have to save. Maybe. I don't want to go down that path. So there's this group called the Behavioral Insights here in the UK, and they used to be associated with the UK government. They no longer are. And their job, these people are superstars at doing the kind of things I'm talking about today, nudging people to make better decisions. You should look at their website because they have just a ton of different nudges that they've used, from making people save more to making people making better health decisions, less smoking, better foods, and so forth. This is just a resource. I'm not going to go into it now. But you should look into what they do. Some people may know what this is. So this is a urinal, and I imagine that most men in here have seen a urinal with a fly etched on it. So this is a famous nudge, and the fly is put there so that men aim at it, and it's put at a location that minimizes the spillage. So the study was originally done in Amsterdam Airport, and with the fly, 80% less spillage occurred. I'm showing you these nudges now in order to get my first goal of, I want you to see you being nudged everywhere in the world. There's lots of nudges. I want you to be aware of how people are trying to nudge you to cities. That's one. There's also a lot of nudging with stairs and escalators. That seems to be very So if you want to be a slightly skinnier stick person, you take the stairs. If you want to be Also, you can mention how many calories are burned by taking the stairs. They're everywhere. I'm very dramatic, my wife will tell you. I think every day I see some type of nudge or someone trying to influence the way I'm making decisions. I had a lot more on here, but in my precious time, I'm going to move forward. This is a fun one. So it's a problem because people smoke cigarettes and throw their butts out. So how do we stop them from doing that? Make it kind of a game like this. So this is nudging. Instead of making it a law, saying we're going to fine you 80 pounds if you throw out your cigarette butts, let's make people do it themselves by doing something like this. And the last one is, this one's been around for a long time. You see the paper towel dispenser, and the more you take, the less South America becomes green. We're nudged all the time. Just keep that in mind as you go through your day. And think about me when you see a fly in a urinal. Anyways, let me get more serious about a different topic here. So this is a famous study. 600 people are going to die based on this new disease coming out. And we have two treatment options, Program A or Program B. So we have this disease, 600 people are expected to die. Program A, you save 200 people for sure. Program B is a third chance 600 people will be saved, and 2/3 chance no one will be saved. Who likes Program A where 200 people are saved for sure? Oh wow, look at all those hands go. Terrific. You're in the majority. 72% of people like A. Now forget that. We have the 600, the disease is going to kill 600 people again. Now you just have programs C and D. Program C is 400 people are going to die for sure. Program D is a third chance no one will die, 2/3 chance 600 will die. Who likes Program C where 400 people will die for sure? Good. Explain yourself to the group. Okay, so most people like Program D here, and I still like Program A and D here. This is a natural thing to do. However, if you look at it, they're mathematically equivalent. If we're talking about 600 people who are going to die, whether I say 200 are saved or 400 will die, it's the same thing. But this is a systematic bias that we have. People become more risky when you frame things in losses. So if you want to influence or nudge people to make the safe choice, put it in terms of gains. If you want them to make the risky choice, put it in terms of losses. Incentives to learn. So you have a child, let's say, and they're getting all C's on their class. C is like an okay grade. You guys took like numbers here. So all C's on their report card. What if you paid them 10 pounds for every A they got? Are their grades going to go up? Are they going to go down? Is it not going to matter? Is it going to affect how they think about high marks and education and learning moving forward? There's an interesting study on this, and what I want you to take away from it is the phrase of the title of the paper, pay enough or don't pay at all. Subjects came into the lab, they got 50 IQ questions, and they had to answer as many as they could in 45 minutes. And there were 4 different payment schemes. One group of people got paid nothing, just do as many as you can. Another group got 10 cents for every question they got right. A third group got a shekel for every one they got right. A fourth one got even more, 3 shekels. So what a normal economist would say is, well, as you pay them a little more, they're going to get more and more better at answering these questions. But in fact, as you go from paying them nothing to paying them a little bit, they do significantly worse. Paying people a little bit can decrease performance. It's a very unintuitive thing that I don't think is talked about enough. They did it also, the same paper looked at students going door to door and trying to get donations for charities. Again, the paying system were the same. Some people didn't get paid at all. Some students got 1% of everything they raised, in addition to what's raised. And some people got 10%, and you got the same outcome. When you incentivize people with just a little bit of money, it can hurt their performance. Really interesting. And the last one here, it's in the same paper. So there's a daycare, and as all daycares do, they close at 4 p.m. And as all parents do, some parents are late. How do we get people to stop showing up late to the daycare? I have a solution. What if we fine people 10 shekels if they're late? So here's what happened. They broke into 2 groups. Some schools had no fine. Some schools had a fine. For the first 4 weeks, there's nothing. The fine was not implemented. As soon as the fine is implemented, which is in this pink region here, the group with the fine was way more likely to be late. It was really counterintuitive. So when it was free to be late, less people do it. When you charge them a little bit, more people are late. And I want to this is the one I'm going to get into the nitty gritty as to why here. There's an interpretation as to why. People don't know the intrinsic value of something. As a parent, I didn't know what was the value of me showing up late. How much did it hurt the daycare? So when you put a fine on it, and it's something small like 10 shekels, I go, oh, it's not that big of a deal if I show up late. So more people show up late than they would have. Even when you take away the fine, people still show up late more often because you've given it a price. Goodness me, oh my time flies. Okay, same reasoning for the grades, IQ test, and donation decisions. It's a quote from Mother Teresa. If I look at the mass, I'll never act. If I look at the one, I will. Quote from someone who's typically not associated with Mother Teresa. If only one man dies of hunger, that's a tragedy. If millions die, that's only statistics. These are very different people. That's Stalin and Mother Teresa, typically not put together. They're saying the same idea, and the idea is that we're moved by individual stories, not aggregate numbers. So you may be aware of this because this involves Save the Children. If you ask people to donate towards Rokia, an individual, a 7-year-old in Mali, they'll give a little over $2. If you ask different people to donate using statistical facts, like 11 million people in Ethiopia need food assistance, they'll give less money. And this is concerning. If you care about Rokia as an individual, you should care at least as much about 11 million people like Rokia. And if you put the two together, you still get a bad effect. I'm going to just jump over this so I have more time. And this is the last slide before I open it up for some questions, before I pause for questions. This is beautiful. So on the y-axis is the proportion of favorable decisions and parole decisions. So there are men and women in prison in Israel waiting to get out of prison from parole decisions. So you can think of the Y as probability that I get released from prison. And the x-axis seems to play a very important role. The x-axis is time of day in which their case was reviewed. These dotted lines are breaks. This is a lunch break. This is a coffee break. So if you're waiting in prison and your case is reviewed either at the beginning of the day or right after a break, you're way more likely to be released from prison than if it's at the end of the day or before the breaks. I say that because it's a very important decision influenced by a very small thing. I'm going to stop for right now. I have more things I can talk about, but I can open it up for questions as well.
Any questions in the room?
Thank you very much. I had a question about the opt-out versus the opt-in. To what extent, or has any research been done on opt-out being driven by people's laziness and not wanting to read what they're ticking or not ticking? Because ticking requires, actually thinking about what you're ticking, if that makes sense. And so, is there any research done on whether it's just because people don't bother reading the bit at the bottom?
I think what's interesting about this research, thank you for your question, is that these are extremely important things. It's how much, will you be a poor person when you're retired? Do we get higher organ donation rates? These are things that really matter. Everyone here, many people have very strong feelings about whether they should be organ donors, whether they should save. And the fact that these very important things can be affected by opt-in or opt-out is amazing. Now, I don't know too much about whether it's boredom or laziness or whatnot, but the reason this is so fascinating to me is that this should overcome boredom. Yeah, this should overcome that, right? These are important enough issues that you should care more about it than just that. I hope that somewhat addressed your question. Yeah.
Oh, hold on.
Oh.
Speak right into it.
How does this sound?
Perfect.
So you touched upon this earlier, the subtle difference between nudging and manipulation. So in just your opinion, I'm curious about where does one end and the other?
That's really, really such a beautiful question. Had I had more time, I would have went into this much deeper. It's such a fascinating philosophical question that we could talk about all day. Maybe we should. So at the end of the slide, you'll see there's a figure here where Christina Graver, who does a lot of work in this area, does things like, is this forbidding someone to do something? If so, then that's a law, and so forth. So there's a lot of yes and no's here. And if you're trying to make someone buy something, that's marketing. And at the end of the day, what is considered nudging is, I'm going to read these last two to you, is it in the best interest of the person being nudged? Which satisfies a lot of the things I talked about today, like savings, organ donation, and so forth. Is it in the best interest of society to nudge them? So that's the difference that they would draw between nudging and marketing or law and so forth.
So that was all super interesting and also impressive how much ground you covered on kind of the famous nudges and like the prospect theory points and all of that. And I guess my question is, when you become aware of this stuff and when you're looking at all of these nudges in your everyday life, does that change how people actually respond to those nudges? If you're aware of it, are you less likely to follow a nudge?
That's a super good question. It's definitely true in my personal case that since I'm aware of it, so I still see this as darker than that, for example. Sorry, I have to go all the way back forward just to go all the way. But in my own life, I come across nudges quite often, and I have a lookout for it, and my goal is that people here also have a lookout for it. So this is me checking out at Ryanair, because I only fly them because I'm cheap. And if we zoom in here, we see what Ryanair is doing here. So this is not a nudge, going back to your question. They're trying to get me to do something. This says, do I want to pay to get SMS? Do I want to donate? I don't want to do any of that. So I just go through and don't check any of this. This middle one says, if you don't wish to receive these offers, please tick this box. I missed this. Actually, my wife was sitting next to me, and I went through it again. I was buying multiple tickets. So one time I missed it, and she pointed it out to me. So yes, I think being aware of nudges can be helpful in terms of noticing things like this. and so forth. Yeah, I think it can help you be aware. I hope everyone is aware of nudges and you see nudges everywhere, especially from Ryanair.
Any other questions? Any online, Jay?
Gabe, that's fine if there's no more questions. I can talk about pain for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Can we talk about pain for 5 minutes? So this is two patients experiencing a colonoscopy, which doesn't matter what it is, just a very painful experience. And they ask the patients at each minute interval, how much pain are you feeling right now between 1 and 10? And my question to you is, this is patient A, patient B, who had more pain? B, I see lots of mouthings of B. B, of course, obviously B had more pain, there's more under the curve. B had a more painful experience. You asked these two patients who suffered more, what was the total amount of pain experienced from the procedure? Patient A reports more pain than patient B. So what this is there's a difference between an experiencing and remembering self. These graphs were made by the experiencing self. At every moment I was saying I'm a pain of 8, a 4, a 3, and so forth. And then when we ask them afterwards, how was that? That's your remembering self. An important part about the remembering self is that's a story that you're telling yourself. And a very important part of any story is the end. So you see patient A had a terrible end. It ended at pain of 7. And patient B had a much lower end. So it's this that's driving the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self. And this is a question that I don't have the answer to, and we could chat about it. What self do we maximize? If we wanted to increase the well-being of the remembering self, well, then what we should do is if someone has patient A, we shouldn't stop the procedure after 8 minutes. We should prolong the procedure and slowly reduce the pain. So you're snickering. I mean, of course, this seems absurd. We could stop the painful procedure right now, but if we're trying to maximize the remembering self, we prolong it and taper it out. This is a lot of the stuff I talked about today is Daniel Kahneman, and this is from a TED Talk. It's very difficult to think straight about well-being. Cass Sunstein's also a big guy in this field. He says there's no claim that life must be dry, chocolate-free, and long. So even if we could structure environments so that all of us, dry means never drank alcohol, so that none of us never drank alcohol, none of us never ate chocolate, and we all lived really long lives, it's not clear that would be the right thing to do anyways. So I guess that's probably the last thing I want to leave you on. The right answer is being aware that there are these things, these two different things that are often in conflict between experiencing and remembering self. Any questions on this?
Time for one more question.
Gabe, I could go all day, but I should probably stop.
Great, so we've come to the end of our time today. I thank you again all very much for taking time out of your day and coming to join us. Big thank you to Ryan, and we think you've left us all some food for thought. Hence the silence at the end. If you've enjoyed this, please look out for the next one of these that we'll be running. It's probably going to be after Christmas. Thank you.